But the landlord came, you know, and he laid my old home low. My poor old wife and I was sadly parted. We were scattered far and wide, and my children starved and died. So it's here I am today, you're broken hearted. I cush le gal Macree, Gaelic, the blessing of my heart on you. I cush le gal Macree, won't you buy a box from me? You'll have the prayers of Dan from Connemara. I'll sell them cheap and low, buy a box before you go. From the broken-hearted farmer Don O'Hara. The boat's at Skibbereen, the moonlight on her meadows, and her 40 shades of green. These were the men that was putting this island on the map. Bing Crosby, grandmother Irish, grandfather Irish, singing, "Oh, maybe someday I'll go back to Ireland, if it's only at the closing of my day, and to sit beside a turf fire in a cabin and watch the sun go down on Galway Bay. I'm a rambler, I'm a gambler, I'm a long way from home, and if you don't like me, just leave me alone. I'll eat when I'm hungry, I'll drink when I'm dry, and if moonshine don't kill me, I'll live till I die." Now, ladies and gentlemen, you're all very welcome.
Thank you.
As we say in Ireland, Céad Míle Fáilte, meaning in English, 100,000 welcomes. Now, what other country in the world would you get a welcome like that? You might get 1,000 welcomes, but 100,000 welcomes. That's extravagant, isn't it? My name is Martin, and what I do here, I'm a small farmer, a poor farmer. Yeah? And I can trace my ancestors back here in the mountains 8 generations. So you could say I'm pretty indigenous in those parts. If you came to see a real Irishman, you have found him. You could call me the last of the Mohican tribe. An Irish Mohican without the feathers, no feathers. Still living here in the mountains in Connemara. Now, we climbed up here to a height of 200 metres. And what we're looking out on here is a vast area of blanket turfland. Turfland, peatland, bogland, it's all the same. In England they say peatland. That's a Latin word, because the English language is a mishmash. Made up of Latin because of the Romans into England, French, the Britons, German, the Saxon, Nordic words then as well, and the old Gaelic or Celtic language, which is older than the pyramids of Egypt. And the reason the Irish and the Scots retained this culture was the Romans never came here. We frightened the hell out of them that time. This blanket turfland then, it stretches from here to Galway City, north again to Mayo and into Sligo. So you're looking out over part of one of the largest blanket turflands in Europe. This area here is dotted with 110 freshwater lakes. Those lakes were established here during the last ice age, teeming with lake trout, and sea trout and salmon comes into some of the big ones there. Out in the distance you see the Atlantic Ocean. Southwest of Clifden you see the white sandy beaches there. Out in the distance you see the white waves. That's one of the most western points of Europe. Now the next small island out there, you cannot see it from here today. You can only see it on a very, very clear day. They call it America is the name of it. Needs to be very clear to see it. You know? Now the other side of that little afforested area, see the little forest and the flat area in the distance. On the 15th of June 1919. That's where Alcock and Brown made their first direct transatlantic flight landing. They left Newfoundland in Canada and 17 hours later they ditched into the turf there. On the 15th of June 1919. That's 100 years next year. It was also from that same area in 1907 Marconi sent the first radio messages across the Atlantic, and they were received in Nova Scotia in Canada. Marconi built the first and largest commercial wireless station in the world in 1907. There was 200 people employed there, and the station was powered and fueled by turf. So we had all the fuel around them. So a lot of people were cutting the turf and saving the turf. That's the way there were so many people employed. The name Marconi, then you'd ask, what was Marconi during the name is Italian. His father was Italian, but his mother was Irish. His mother brought him back here as a young lad. I think something went wrong in the marriage, and his mother brought him home. He was reared here. His mother was Anne Jameson, the whiskey family here, Jameson Whiskey. That station then was damaged in 1921. In 1921, the War of Independence here was at its highest. The rising in Dublin was put down in 1916 by brute force. The British brought up big guns up the Liffey, and they levelled half Dublin with them. And then the Irish were sort of dismayed at the force they used, and this created a lot of bad thoughts about the English. So then in 1918 the Irish formed all over the country a guerrilla army called the Irish Republican Army, or the IRA. And the IRA sort of got a lot of their men trained in the mountains, young farmers' sons. They saw what the English was doing, and they didn't like it, so they were going to strike for their freedom again. And then in 1921 the British sent in badly disciplined troops. They were known as the Black and Tans. These troops were some of them came back from the last war, some of them were alcoholics, some of them were shell-shocked and crazy, and they shot innocent people in the east. They burned houses. They were burning their way through. And then the fellas in the west heard of this, and they prepared themselves. So when the Black and Tans came here, they were met with fierce resistance. So the Black and Tans lost men fighting the Irish, the IRA here. They retreated to the Marconi station. They were sending messages to Dublin and London, and the IRA hit two of the big condensers. So the line of communication was stopped. And then when the British tried to venture out to apprehend the leaders here, they were hit again. They were met with resistance every time, and they still lost men. This happened in March, and by June the British withdrew, and there was a truce, and we haven't seen them since. It was like a mini Brexit that time. Over here then you see there's a big mountain range there as well. Those mountains, you see two of them rising there. They rise to a height of 800 metres. They're known as the 12 bins because there's 12 of them there in a row. And it's beneath the nearest one here, just over the ridge there. That's where we extract the Connemara green marble. So that's where the green marble comes from. Now any question you want to ask, you're quite free to do so. Now we go from here down to the cottage on the turf. And anytime you want to ask a question, it's €2 every question. And then if you ask a personal question, it's €5. And then if you ask no question, it's €10. So you're penalised for staying silent as well. I came up with this thing about 5 years ago. You know, I thought this might make the poor farmer a bit richer. But it hasn't worked for some reason. And I can't figure out why. You know, I sort of devised it myself. And then I thought long and hard about it. €2 every question, €5 for a personal question, and €10 for no question. And what's wrong with that? And nobody could tell me what's wrong with it. So maybe you people now from Finland would have a brighter idea than me. Laid my old home low, my poor old wife and I was sadly parted. We were scattered far and wide. And maybe that's a good idea. You know, he has given me inspiration. I charge €2 for every photograph. Now what we have here is turf. This is blanket turf. In the Midlands you have raised bogs. Now blanket turf is made up of compressed plant matter. And what happens is the plants grow, they fall down, they grow again, they fall down year after year. No insects, no worms, no oxygen. So this creates a build-up of compressed plant matter. 30 centimetres equals 1,000 years. So every 30 centimetres you go down, you're going back 1,000 years. So when you come back here again in 1,000 years, I'll be standing up here.
Eli 1000 vuoden kuluttua, kun tullaan takaisin, niin Matti seisoo niin 30 senttiä korkeammalla, koska 1000 vuotta siinä menee, että se turve muodostuu taas uudestaan.
As we Irish very optimistic.
Irlantilaista optimistista kansaa.
We're in no hurry doing anything. We take our time, but we get it done eventually. We were fighting with the Brits for 700 years.
Irlantilaiset ottaa niinku asiat rauhallisesti. Että
that was the longest war in the world. We never talk about it.
Kyllä ne jossakin vaiheessa tulee tehtyä. Ihan niin kuin brittejäkin vastaan taisteltiin yli 700 vuotta. Siinäkin selvi.
And now we like them again.
Really?
I don't know.
Yeah. Nyt kuulemma tykkää niistä taas.
Now, every time you go down through the turf, then you can carbon date the plants. Today, with all the new technology, you get a lot of information locked in the turf. It's like reading a prehistoric book.
Eli kun sinne turpeeseen siellä säilyy näitä niinku esineitä, niin se on vähän kuin lukisi kirjaa, kun rupeaa turvetta katsomaan, niinku, kun kaivaa sitä.
So by going down through the turf today, we now know that the first people arrived here 8,000 years ago. And when they arrived here, we find their ceremonial sites beneath the turf. We find their stone coffins. Everything is preserved. And we find their ancient calendars.
Eli tänne on siis ensimmäiset asukkaat tullut jo noin 8000 vuotta sitten, koska heidän niin kun, jäänteitään on löydetty turpeen sisältä.
We also know when they arrived here, this was a forest. Not these conifers you see here today. These were introduced from North America. A forest of oak, ash, elm, birch, beech, alder, all broadleaf deciduous trees. We find those trees beneath the turf. We left a sample here 12 years ago. Old Irish oak. radiocarbon dated in Dublin and Oxford in England. And the results came back. This timber grew here 6,500 years ago.
Wow, miettikää, siis nämä puut, jotka tässä nyt on, ne on siis kasvanut täällä noin 6500 vuotta sitten. Ne on löytynyt tuolta turpeen keskeltä ja ne on viety Dubliniin ja myös Oxfordiin tutkittavaksi. Ja näiden perusteella niin pystytään päättelemään, että täällä on ollut suuria metsäalueita.
And the longer it's left beneath the turf, the harder it gets.
Joo, ja pidempään se on siellä turpeen sisällä, niin se kovempaa se on.
We cut the turf, then we call this the bog. And we cut the turf out with a wing spade or a schlon. Schlon in Gaelic, slain in English. Now you see the correlation of the language, schlon, slain. A lot of the Gaelic Celtic words in the English language.
Tuo on nyt se lapio, mitä yritin selittää.
Now before I cut out a few sods, then I have to take off my dancing shoes.
Eli ensin pitää ottaa pois tuo tanssikenkäs.
These are a poor farmer's dancing shoes.
Köyhän maanviljelijän tanssikenkäs.
And when I go to dance tonight, then I take a nice lady out dancing. Immediately she sees my shoes. She knows I'm a poor farmer. And there's no great expectations after that. She offers to buy me the round of drinks.
Mä menen tansseihin tänä iltana, niin naiset siellä näkee välittömästi hänen kengistä, että hän on köyhä maanviljelijä. Ja sitten ne naiset tarjoaa hänelle juomaa.
On the Wellington. These are called after the Duke of Wellington. A lot of people don't realise the man that defeated Napoleon at Waterloo. A lot of people would say today, if you ask them who was he, and they say he was English. But in actual fact, after Wellesley was Irish, born in Dublin. If you go to the Phoenix Park, you'll see the Wellington monument still standing there.
Eli kumisaappaita kutsutaan englanniksi Wellingtoneiksi. Se tulee siis sen Wellingtonin herttuan mukaan. Hänhän oli siis irlantilainen, syntynyt Dublinissa, kun moni luulee, että hän on englantilainen. Ja siitä syystä siellä Phoenix Parkissa, kun nähtiin se pitkä obelis, niin sehän on Wellingtonin monumentti.
There's not a good Irishman. The English built their empire around the world, but the Irish was with them all the time. The Irish and the English, they built that empire together, really, if you like. But then the landlords here and the English discriminated against the Irish. And they didn't want the Irish language, which was as old as the pyramids of Egypt. They didn't want the culture because we were different. There's no doubt, because the Romans never came here. We had our own language, we had our own music, dancing, Gaelic games. This is all part of an ancient Celtic culture. So the English tried to destroy this. So the Irish rebelled against that. And that's why the Irish fell out of being part of the British Empire.
You know what we call rubber boots in Finland?
Rubber boots.
Yeah, what we call them in Finland. They're called Nokia.
Like the mobile phone. Nokia.
Same company.
So I'd start talking into my wedding. And in Germany they call them Gummistiefel. That's the way the German language as well. In America and England they take their children to Kindergarten, German. They go up the hill with the rucksack. It's German as well. You go to the Aran Islands and the biggest island is Inishmore. Inish's island, more is larger, big, that's Gaelic. And I want more. So the English language, it's 35% French as well, because of the Britons. That's a mishmash. Now, if you go down here,
Niin mennään katsoa, kunhan
5 kilos.
se painaa noin 5 kiloa.
It's 90% water content.
90% vettä.
Spread out on the ground like that to dry for 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, then we foot the turf like that over there. We put it standing against each other like a pyramid, and the wind goes through it.
Eli 2 viikkoa se on tuolla lattialla tuossa maassa ja sitten se laitetaan tuollaisia pieniä kekoja, että on pieni pyramidi ja sitten tuuli pääsee kuivamaan niitä.
And after another 6 weeks like that, then it goes from a very soft sod like that Totally dry stuff. Now you have fuel. You take this home, you start your fire, you have heat for the winter, you do all your cooking with this. That's the only way you could cook your food. And then you could make your cappuccino as well. Now to have enough of turf for the year, you needed 5 tons of this. And that's about 30 tons of that wet turf. Any man worth his salt would cut the 30 tons in the past in 12 days. So you came to the bog in the morning, you might walk about a mile to a good bog, you brought your food with you, you brought your drinks with you, you brought the tea with you, you made a fire on the bog, and that's how you boiled your tea. Because otherwise you get nothing done, you'd be going back and over all day and wasting time. And then you kept cutting your turf all day long for 12 days. So you kept cutting, throwing it out, cutting, and in the evening when you went home, you didn't need to go to Pilates. You had all your Pilates done all day long.
Ennen kuin 30 tonnia turvetta nostettiin, niin siinä meni 12 päivää. Että kun aamulla lähdettiin sinne suolle, joka saattoi olla jonkun kilometrin päässä kotitalosta, niin otettiin kaikki eväät mukaan. Sitten päivän aikana siellä koko päivän nostettiin tuota turvetta 12 päivän ajan. Ja sillä tavalla saatiin koko vuoden polttoaineet kerättyä. Ei tarvinnut mennä pilatestunnille sen jälkeen. Meni kotiin.
You came back to the bog again in the evening and you laid your tired body, you know, you felt a bit tired, you need soothing, and you lie down in your jacuzzi. Irish jacuzzi. This is very good for the skin. So that's, you had a little hole like that in the bog, came back in the evening and you sat down there nice and easy. You left your glass of wine here. And as you sipped your wine, the water got warm. Very good for you. I do it every evening. You know, you laugh at that now. And you'll probably go to a hotel and you'll get one of these spa baths, you know, a bog bath. They'll turn it all up for you. And they'll charge you hundreds of euros. You come back here this evening and lie down with me and it costs you nothing.
Kylpylään kun menee, niin tämmöisistä vesihoidosta velotetaan satoja euroja. Tänne jos tuutte illalla käymään hänen kanssaan, niin hän tarjoaa ilmaisen kylmyn tossa.
There's more.
Sitten on hänen kanssaan.
Oh. Yeah, it's very good nourishment for the skin. Yeah.
No wonder you found no ladies.
What?
Don't want to come.
Well, I'm getting it very hard to get them to come to my jacuzzi, all right. Okay, any more questions? Why? And my children starved and died. So it's here I am today, you're broken hearted. I cush legal Macree, Gaelic, the blessing of my heart on you. I cush legal Macree, won't you buy a box from me? You'll have the prayers of Dan from Connemara. We had antagonism in Ireland for hundreds of years. British did introduce penal laws, so that took away all the rights of the Irish people. They had no rights. Maximum height of a door, that was it. Now the people were the tallest race of people in Europe, it's recorded, prior to 1847. And the windows could only be half this size. This was to break them psychologically, mentally. You know, they had to bend going in and out their doors. As the story goes, in 1845, Dan O'Hara increased the height of his door, he increased the size of his windows, and the landlord evicted him.
Eli miettikää, silloin kun täällä oli brittihallinto, niin britit säätivät semmoiset lait, että oviaukko ei saanut olla tämän korkeampi kuin tämä. Ja täällä päässä Irlantia asui kaikkein pisimmät ihmiset Irlannissa. Joten se oli yksi psykologinen tapa niin nöyryyttää irlantilaisia. Ja sitten ikkunat eivät saaneet olla kuin puolet tuosta, mikä tämä ikkuna on. Ja Dan O'Hara vuonna 1845, niin hän rikkoi näitä sääntöjä vastaan.
Now the landlord arrived, accompanied by armed police. The landlord is the law, it's mind over matter. Landlord don't mind, and the tenant don't matter. So the people are escorted outside the door, the family is escorted outside the door, the roof is set on fire, and some of the walls are pushed in. This is a typical eviction in the west of Ireland during that period. Between 1845 and 1852, 65,000 families are evicted from their homes in this fashion, forced across the sea to America, Canada, Australia and New Zealand, and half them died on the coffin ships going. So the story of Dan O'Hara then is just one example.
Eli tämä Dan O'Haran tarina on yksi esimerkki näistä häädöistä, mitä tapahtui täällä silloin, koska kun Dan O'Hara rikkoi näitä brittien lakeja vastaan, niin tuo maanomistaja lähetti tänne joukkoonsa, jotka häätivät perheen ulos, sytyttivät tuon katon tuleen ja kaatoivat osan näistä seinistä. Ja vuodesta 1845 vuoteen 1952 niin noin 52 000 henkeä perhettä on täältä lähtenyt häädön takia Connemarasta pois.
They're doing the same thing in Scotland. They called it the clearances. The Scots are Celts as well. Those are hard to subdue. So in essence, this is what's happening in Scotland and the west of Ireland. These are Celtic people, and this is ethnic cleansing. They cannot subdue them because these fellas they won't conform with this other kind of culture that the British are trying to impose on them. And then when you try to impose something, it's much harder. So Dan O'Hara then left here and he sailed for New York. His wife dies on the journey and 3 of his children dies. When he arrives in America, he wouldn't have any knowledge of this new English language. People living here are speaking in their native Gaelic or Celtic tongue. And Dan O'Hara ends up on the streets of New York selling matches. And that's why you have the story today of Dan O'Hara. The song, telling a story. Because the Irish are Celts. They put all their history and stories into songs. The Romans wrote down the history all over Europe. The Celts sang their history. The Celtic history was a verbal history. So the Irish are Celts.
Dan O'Hara lähti perheenästä Yhdysvaltojen matkalla, niin vaimo ja 3 lasta kuolivat. Ja sitten kun hän päätyi sinne New Yorkin kadulle, niin hän ei ymmärtänyt sitä kieltä, mitä siellä puhuttiin, koska hän ei ollut kuullut ennen englannin kieltä. Joten hän rupesi sitten myymään tulitikkuja siellä New Yorkin kadulla. Eli tämä on yksi hyvin tyypillinen tarina täällä.
So the song then tells the story. One verse of the song would say, "But the landlord came, you know, and he laid my old home low. My poor old wife and I was sadly parted. We were scattered far and wide, and my children starved and died. So it's here I am today, you're broken hearted. I cush legal Macree, Gaelic, the blessing of my heart on you. I cush legal Macree, won't you buy a box from me? You'll have the prayers of Dan from Connemara. I'll sell them cheap and low, buy a box before you go. From the broken-hearted farmer, Dan O'Hara. Will you sing that in Finnish? Surveys carried out then 9 years ago in the United States, 50 million claiming Irish descent within the United States. 2 largest ethnic groupings in America, Germans and the Irish. And we talk about a few recent Irish-American presidents. We talk about Ronald Reagan, Tipperary, Jimmy Carter, Longford, William Ford, evicted the same year as Dan O'Hara, Cork, father of Henry Ford, the man that made the cars in America. Henry Ford then built the first and largest Ford factory outside of America, was the largest outside of America, in Cork, where his father was evicted. By 1930, the Ford factory in Cork was employing 7,500 highly paid jobs. So out of bad things come good things sometimes. Only for his father was evicted in Cork, it's very unlikely that Henry Ford would be making cars in Detroit. Then we had John F. Kennedy, Wexford. Bill Clinton, the west of Ireland here. Abraham Lincoln, Monaghan. Jefferson, Tyrone. Andrew Jackson, Fermanagh. These are only a handful. Surveys carried out in the last 3 years indicate 35 out of the 45 American presidents, their ancestors walked outdoors like this in Ireland. It's amazing to think that 35 of the American presidents so far, their ancestors came from Ireland.
Eli 35 Yhdysvaltojen 45 presidentistä on siis irlantilaistaustaisia. Se on aika merkittävä.
Now the man that's done the most for Ireland, the one that has shadowed over there, that's why the Irish likes him, Bill Clinton, peace process. He flew in here 5 times while he was United States President, pushing the peace process. Sent over a special invite to Northern Ireland for 4 years, Senator George Mitchell. The American investment here is huge. Silicon Valley of Europe, a lot of people don't realise, right here in Ireland. Direct foreign investment. And Clinton then is coming here every 2 or 3 times every year since. He was here 3 weeks ago. He bought a house here. So no other president showed as much commitment to the home of his ancestors as Bill Clinton. And that's the way the Irish likes him so well. Okay, the Kennedys were behind him in America, and so were the Morrisons and the O'Neills and all these fellas in Congress. And the Irish were very strong in the Senate and Congress as well. So when Clinton wanted to do something special, and it was to do with Ireland, they were 4 square behind him. Yeah, something good. Yeah, go on, do it, and we will support you. And that's the way he got the support. Now, when the people lived here and they were totally self-sufficient, they also made their own whiskey. And the Old Irish whiskey is known as Ishkebaha. Ishkebaha means water of life. Ishke. In Scotland they say whiskey. Whiskey. So now you know where the word whiskey comes from in the English language. It's Gaelic Celtic again. Ishkebaha was declared illegal here in 1661. The Irish wouldn't obey the rules. And the Irish kept making it in the mountains. Then it became known as Mountain Dew. The Irish are going to America now in their thousands, and Canada. And of course they bring their culture with them. They start making it over there in the mountains, and over there they call it moonshine. Moonshine, Mountain Dew, Ishkebaha. They also bring over the singing, the dancing, the music. Country western music today coming from America. Celtic. Bluegrass Celtic. Johnny Cash. All Irish roots. I miss the River Shannon. The boats at Skibbereen. The moonlight on her meadows. And her 40 shades of green. These were the men that was putting this island on the map. Bing Crosby, grandmother Irish, grandfather Irish, singing, oh, maybe someday I'll go back to Ireland, if it's only at the closing of my day, and to sit beside a turf fire in a cabin, and watch the sun go down on Galway Bay. These were our kings and queens. Today then, we still make the Ishkebaha here today. Still illegal, still duty free, and it's still fairly high in proof. This is the Ishkebaha, this is the Mountain Dew, this is the moonshine. I'm a rambler, I'm a gambler, I'm a long way from home, and if you don't like me, just leave me alone. I'll eat when I'm hungry, I'll drink when I'm dry, And if moonshine don't kill me, I live till I die.
Kerro. Mitä? Okei. Mä sanoin, että
I have another idea now.
Yeah.
When you come out of the bus, you give me €2 and then they might all give me 2.
Okay, so I come out here.
I guess he wasn't trying, but
Well, he said, keep trying, he said. Buy a box before you go from the broken-hearted farmer, Don O'Hara.